That day, I didn't think anyone would be home. After class, I decided to stop by and drop off Laya's book in my bag before heading to the cafe. I knew the house well because I spent half of my childhood there, so I didn't knock. Lila, I called softly, my voice echoing into the silence. Though I assumed she might be in her room with headphones on as usual, I took the stairs up, second door on the left of hers, or so I thought, and I opened it without hesitation, and I saw him. The air inside was still warm, touched with the smell of old wood and something slightly citrusy, like someone had just cleaned. Mr. Bennett was not aware of me and was standing close to the window shirtless. His spine was straight and pallid in the golden afternoon light, with his back to the entrance. The window frame was held with one hand. A sketch pad was resting carelessly against his leg in the other's hand. He was still staring at some place far away like a photograph. His body was strong in a modest, genuine way, rather than chiseled like someone attempting to impress. Frozen in surprise rather than embarrassment, this wasn't merely a father figure. It appeared thoughtful, oddly soft, and human. He turned slightly, not shocked, but simply aware that he was no longer alone. His gaze locked with mine. He blinked slowly, then raised his brow slightly. I blurted out, "I'm so sorry. I thought this was Leia's room. I didn't mean," as he placed the drawing pad on the ledge and reached for a shirt that was resting over the chair. There was no shouting, no embarrassing fear, just a quiet, startled calm. He laughed briefly, not in jest, just in amusement. "She used to switch rooms. Claire, it's all right." I didn't realize he recalled my name, but he did. He put on the shirt and moved closer, now fully illuminated by the light, as I remained in the doorway, uncertain whether to leave or continue. He seemed odd, as if the world had numbed everyone else, yet he remained acutely focused. "You've matured," he said, not in a spooky manner, but rather perceptively. I nodded while still awkwardly holding the book in front of me, adding, "I simply came to return this. I offered it as a sacrifice for peace." He grinned and said, "Thank you, but she's at the library." I nodded once more, lingering for an excessive amount of time before turning to go. He said, "Behind me some people see everything in a glance," as I ascended the steps. "Claire, that's rare." My ears were ringing as I descended the stairs. What I saw didn't alter who I am. That's how I perceived him. Additionally, the way he gazed at me as though he had just been spotted, I knew, though I didn't entirely understand why, that nothing would ever feel quite the same again when that moment sunk deep within my chest. I kept thinking about him all the time, not compulsively, not to the point where you cover your face with a pillow and blush. Quieter than that, a constant murmur in the recesses of my consciousness. The way he seemed while standing in the sun, and the fact that he didn't recoil when I spotted him, I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just a weird moment that would pass. But it didn't, and I began to notice him more. His calm voice and the way he uttered my name as if it meant something. The books on the shelf that I had never considered reading, and the framed drawings in the hallway. Even though I knew nothing about him, I still wanted to. I ran into him at the downtown bookshop a few days later. He was looking through a volume of poetry, his face furrowed as if he were debating the page. After hesitating, I said, "I didn't think you were a poetry guy." In a casual manner, "I didn't think you were someone who would interrupt a man in the middle of an argument with Rilke," he said, looking up with that same faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He gave me the book and said, "Here, read page 24. I giggled, startled that he recognized the name. I did it in silence. The words were lovely, hurting, and heavy. Something in my chest had moved once more as I looked back up, and I said, "I like it." That stayed with me. "Me too," he said. "It reminds me not to wait too long." We crossed paths once more. Every time we spoke, we never brought up Laya. Once in the cafe, once in the park. Never about little matters. We always let go of deeper regret dreams. I didn't intend it, and I knew he didn't. But something was developing between us. Before life got in the way, he informed me, he used to paint. I used to think that creating was selfish, but now I think that not creating is worse. I shared with him my love of writing, but I never showed anyone how my life seemed to be a replica of someone else's plan, and he listened to me as though I were important. He gave me a book one afternoon, a little old novel with notes scrawled in the margins. He said, "Maybe it will change you too." I took it home and read it all at once, and his remarks were more personal than anything he had spoken out loud. Inquiries concerning love and aging made me feel as though I was looking at a map of his heart. It wasn't about age or overt attraction, but rather connection. I started going to Isla's house more frequently, and not just for her. Sometimes she wasn't even home, so I would tell myself I was dropping off something or just passing by, but I knew he knew too. Two people were quietly orbiting the same desire to be seen and known, and somewhere in all of that, I realized I wasn't just curious about him anymore. I was drawn in. It scared me how much that comforted me. We had longer talks that were laden with things we both understood but didn't say out. A beat was present, followed by a soft pull. I observed how he moved, how he listened, and how his eyes brightened when he talked about art, old films, or memories that were still significant to him. He would prepare coffee, and we would sit at the little table in the sunroom, talking about nothing and everything. He never even hinted about crossing any lines, and perhaps that was the reason it got worse or better. I was no longer certain. The emotions weren't naive, but they weren't incorrect either. They were just too genuine. Even still, I couldn't help but worry what this signified and what I was becoming into. Was I just making this up to make him feel seen? Or was this really happening? Two individuals brought together in a manner that defied easy explanation. It changed once again one evening. I inquired about a painting that was hanging in the hallway. It was a delicate watercolor that had faded with time. He paused, then remarked, "That was my last piece. I haven't painted since." He responded, not with yelling or betrayal, just silence, when asked why his marriage ended. I felt my chest tighten as two people drifted so far apart that we forgot how each other looked. He wasn't sharing a tale with me. "You still see people," and he was giving me a piece of himself. I whispered, "I think you've always seen too much." He said, "See things others miss. You've always had that." He led me to the garage, which he had converted into a small studio. Dusty canvases lined the wall, and there was a table covered in paper in the corner. He opened a drawer and took out a sketch pad, flipping through the pages until he found one that was me. Although it wasn't a reproduction, it was me. My head tilt, my shoulder curve, and the same expression I didn't realize I was wearing when I was deep in thought. He stated almost sheepishly, "I didn't mean to draw you, I just couldn't not." But I didn't back down. He didn't say anything, he just let me gaze. I didn't feel violated. Instead, I felt understood, as if he had captured something even I didn't fully know about myself. "You inspire me." I stayed. "This isn't easy." I muttered, "No," and he nodded. "But neither is being alive." For the first time, I stopped feeling bad about it, because sometimes connections come to you before you realize it, and all you can do is feel them. There was no need for further communication, no confession, no promises, just the understanding that there was something genuine and strong between us. Days went by, and what had started out as a subtle undercurrent became more intense. I found myself reading the book he had lent me again and reliving our chats, even taking note of the sky's colors as he had previously described them. But beneath that, There was a question. How long could this remain unsaid until it had to break or change? Laya noticed something. Everything felt sharper and more alive. Just a shift. No details. Her eyes lingered too long, making me consider what I was doing and what he was doing. We hadn't touched and hadn't passed that last line. She asked me if I was well and remarked that I appeared distant recently, lying gently and just being weary. He smiled and agreed. However, emotionally, we were in a whole different place, deep within a space that was neither of ours, and I still didn't want to leave it. The next time I visited, it was pouring, and he was painting by himself. He looked up, startled but not alarmed. He continued, "You always come when it rains." "Maybe that's when I feel the most," I said. He put down the brush and simply stared at me. The quiet between us was no longer awkward. Rather, it was complete. "I've been thinking," I added, taking a step closer, "about how people overlook things when they're overly cautious and how we occasionally persuade ourselves to ignore what's important in order to avoid criticism." Slowly, he nodded. I went on. "I think about that too every day. I don't know what this is, but I know it's real, and I'm sick of acting like what we have in common is a mistake because it doesn't neatly fit into a box." He remained silent for a while. He gave me a paper he had just taken from his table. It was another sketch, this one showing two hands almost touching, but not quite. He whispered softly, "I know what it could cost, but it's the most honest thing I've felt in a long time." I held the sketch as if it were delicate. Perhaps I whispered, "I'm not asking for forever." For the first time, he stretched out not to possess, but to connect, and he did it with clarity and not rush, only for the truth, even if it was only temporary. Just putting a hand on mine. Consistent grounding. Nothing careless happened. No mayhem. We didn't need to define it or provide a label to what we were. Just that basic human moment where two people were completely visible. The important thing was that we were no longer evading it. I felt lighter when I left later, not because everything had been settled, but rather because it had been recognized. Love doesn't always show up as you anticipate. It can be quite awkward and ill-timed at times, but when it's genuine, you can feel it in your bones. And sometimes it's more than enough to simply have the courage to experience it.